Hey, what's up? It's Václav here. On this channel we talk about automating your home. We spoke about lights, heating, shades, irrigation. But what if I told you you could also automate your internet? And this is what we're going to be talking about today. Now you're probably thinking, automating internet, what a nonsense, what is he talking about? Let me explain. On my router I have a couple of firewall rules or queues for traffic shaping. And I have my router integrated with Home Assistant. And so what I do is I turn those rules on and off based on a situation. Let me give you a few examples. One of them is I use Let's Encrypt add-on to renew my certificates. And this add-on requires to have certain ports open on my router. But I don't want to have those ports open all the time. So what I do is I have the automation that renews those certificates. And in the automation, I enable and turn on those rules. So I start forwarding those ports. Then I renew the certificate and then I shut those ports down again. So I don't leave them open all the time. Let me give you another example. Many people work from home, and I do work from home as well, more than before. And what happens is we all share internet. It's me, my wife, my kids, and when they don't work, they like to watch YouTube or Netflix. You know, we have this 4K TV, and they watch Netflix, and they can use quite a bit of internet. My son decides to upload some images or videos to the internet. At the same time as me and my wife have an important meeting with our customers or a conference. And we start complaining that the video is not best or the audio is not great. And we don't want to do that. So what I have done is I have configured this queuing or traffic shaping that will limit the maximum bandwidth that's used by those services, by those video services. And I automatically turn those rules on in the morning, and I turn them off when I'm not home, or I turn them off in the evening when we don't work. Because when we want to all watch movies, we want to watch them in the best quality, so I don't want to have this limitation. And this works seamlessly in the background. It turns on in the morning and it turns off in the evening. And so what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to show you how to do those rules on the router, how to integrate it with Home Assistant if you have the same router as I do, and how to set up those automation. Now, I'm not saying that you have to do exactly the same thing as I do. These are just examples. I'm pretty sure you can find other uses. For example, if you would like to turn off Wi-Fi after midnight so your kids can't browse the internet and they have to go to sleep, you can do it as well. Pretty easy. So let me show you how it's done. Okay, for my internet connectivity, I use MikroTik routers. So I use this RB4011. I purchased this one recently, and I have it connected to 3 access points also from MikroTik. And the beauty of that is the configuration of those is managed using a protocol called Capsman, and they're managed centrally. So I just plug them in, and the whole configuration is managed from this main router. And they also create a mesh, so when I move around the house, I have a seamless connectivity. But we're not going to be playing with those today. I have this old RB750, which is quite powerful as well. I used to run on that for a long time, and I want to replace that when I wanted to replace and upgrade my Wi-Fi. So what I have done is I have connected my PC on this port 5, and I have connected this internet port to the main internet router actually. So I have this router sitting in the middle, and we can play with that and do some testing. So we're gonna use this Winbox, which is the GUI configuration tool from MikroTik. So I'm going to open this RB750. I have reset the configuration, so it has the default configuration on it. And what we're going to do is we're going to create queues to limit the YouTube and Netflix traffic. So we will do it in IP firewall. And these are the default rules that were set up when I reset the configuration. So I can show them to you because there's nothing special about them. And we're gonna go into Mangle, and here we will create a Mangle rule in the pre-routing chain. So this is the default, and in advanced we will look for content youtube.com, and in the action we will say add destination to address list, and we will create address list called YouTube, and in the timeout we will say 30 minutes, and we can add a comment, and I'll say add YouTube to address list. So we have one rule, add YouTube to address list. Now I'm gonna double click on this rule, and I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to create a new one for content googlevideo.com, and I will in comment I will change this to Google Video. So I have those two rules, and I will create similar two rules for Netflix. Here I will say netflix.com, but for this one I'm going to create address list called Netflix. And I will copy that once more, because Netflix can also use content from nflxvideo.net. So with that, it will automatically, when I establish connection, when I go to YouTube, when I go to Netflix, it will automatically get this address list and put it in the address list. There are gonna be new address lists created for YouTube and for Netflix. So let's try that. I'm gonna go to YouTube. I'm gonna take some 4K video, so it has some bandwidth. I'm gonna just start it. And then when I get back to my address list, that it added 3 addresses into the YouTube address list automatically. So we're halfway through. Then we need to mark the actual packets. So what we need to do is we need to create additional 2 Mangle rules. But these ones are gonna be in the forwarding chain. And in the advanced, we will say this will go from source address list, which is a YouTube. And in action, we will say mark packets, and we will call this YouTube. And I have to disable the pass-through. And I'm gonna comment mark. So I'll apply that, and I will copy it, and I will do the same for Netflix. So I will pick up the Netflix list, and for that I'm going to create Netflix packet. And I will update the comments as well. So all the packets that are going to go from YouTube or from Netflix, they're gonna be marked with this label. And now I can just create a queue. So I will create a simple queue. I'm gonna call it YouTube. I'm going to say in advanced, the packet marks are YouTube packet. In target, I will select the bridge, my LAN, my internal network, because they're coming from the internet to my internal network. And in here, I will set up, let's say, 2 megabit bandwidth in both directions. I'm going to do the same for Netflix, with the exception that here I'm gonna select the Netflix packets. There you go. So I have 2 queues, one for Netflix, one for YouTube. So let's see how it works. So I'm going to play the video. I'm gonna turn the sound down, and then I'm going to check my traffic in Task Manager. And in the Ethernet, I should see that it's limiting the traffic to 2 megabit per second, but it's not, as you can see. We're going all the way up to 40 megabit per second. So something doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is because we use this fast track routing. So what we need to do is we need to go to IP settings, and we need to disable the fast path. And when I do that, the YouTube should turn to amber or to red as a sign that is actually filtering the traffic. And there you go, it's now red. If I double click on it and I go to traffic, it'll show me the chart, and you will see that it's limiting to 2 megabit per second. And indeed, if I go back to my task manager, Ethernet, you will see that my traffic is around 2 megabit per second. And if I disable this rule, then you will see that the traffic will come back to the full speed. So now you know how you can set up queues for the Netflix and YouTube traffic on your MikroTik router. Now, if you want to shape other type of traffic, I'm pretty sure you can find the setup on the internet. Now let's talk about how you can integrate it into Home Assistant. So we'll create switch for each rule, and so you can turn them on and off. For that, I use this MikroTik router integration, which you can download from the Home Assistant community store. So let me show you how to download it and configure it. It's pretty straightforward. First thing we need to do is to install the MikroTik router integration from the community store. So we will go to community store, integrations, and I already have it installed, so I don't have to do it again. But if I didn't have it, I would just hit this plus. Here I would search for MikroTik, and here there will be MikroTik router integration. But like I said, I already have it. So let's go to the repository, because there are useful instructions how to set up the integration. So you can check what's possible in here, but there are setup instructions. So we need to create a user on the MikroTik router with the permissions to read, write, API, and test, and then we need to connect to it. So let's go to the router, and what we need to do is we go to system users, and we will create a group. We will call it Home Assistant, and we will say it's write, read, test, and API, and that's the group. And then we will create a user, call it Home Assistant, and the group will be Home Assistant, and the password will be test. So we have the account. There is one more thing we need to do in our case, because this is a test. I'm not really connected to the internet, so I'm connected to the same network as the Home Assistant. So the Home Assistant is on the same network that would normally be the internet port, if you know what I mean. And by default, there is a rule that drops all traffic not coming from LAN. So I'm going to just disable it, otherwise I wouldn't be able to connect to that router. So the other thing is we need to check what is the IP address of it. So I will go to IP DHCP client, and the IP address is 92.68.139. So I'll remember that, and I can go back to my Home Assistant, and I go to configuration, integration, and I already have one set up for my actual router, and we might be using that later. But for now, I'm gonna just show you how to edit, how to add connection to this router. So I'm gonna just hit this plus. I'm gonna search for MikroTik router. I already have MikroTik, so I will call it MikroTik test. I will enter our IP address, so 192.168.139. This was Home Assistant, and here it was test, wasn't it? There you go, and I just submit it, and we should connect to this router. And indeed, it's a success. It found those 5 ports, system, and our queues. So let's finish that, and I can go in here, and what I usually do is I will go to those entities and I will select the ones that I'm not gonna use. So I might just select all for now, except the queue for the Netflix and YouTube, and I might use the other ones later, but for now I'm gonna just say I will disable selected. So I will only have those 2 entities. It's gonna be switch, MikroTik test, queue, Netflix. So I'm gonna just click on that and show it in here. If I go back and I open this MikroTik on the right side of my screen, and I open my web browser on the other side. So if I go to the YouTube queue and it's disabled, if I enable it, it will enable it here on the router. So by doing that, I can control the config on the router. So what we have done is we have created an entity in Home Assistant where we can simply, by switching switch on and off, change the configuration of our router. And as an added bonus, we have a number of attributes in here. So if you want to monitor the traffic, how much we're using that, we have access to that as well. Let me show you in the developer tools, paste it in here, and as you can see, there is the state on and off. And as you can see, you have all of those attributes that you can use. And I only have two entities because I have disabled all the other ones. I want to keep it clean. But by all means, you can have all the others and you can control all the aspects in your router. So all the filter rules or even ports, or gather the statistics about the port usage as I'm doing in here. And what I do is I actually have them in Grafana. So I have a history of my internet traffic in Grafana, which is pretty sweet. So now we have those switches, and when we switch them on, we will just turn on those rules on our MikroTik router, and when we switch them off, those rules will be disabled. It's pretty cool, very useful. Now, what I do with that is I can use it manually from my dashboard, but I can also automate it, and I automate it based on the time schedule. Now, I'm doing automation using Node-RED, not because I have to. I mean, it's pretty simple, straightforward automation. I just liked how it looks like, that I don't have to search for it, look through the code. So if I want to adjust it and change it later on, that I could do it. So I'm going to show you how it's done in Node-RED, but I'm pretty sure you could do it in standard Home Assistant automation. It's just turning switch on and off based on time. I suppose this is one of the simplest automations you can make. So let me show you what I've done. Okay, so let's go to Node-RED and let me show you what I've got. So I have this automation for MikroTik, and so let's start here from the middle where I trigger the automation using the light scheduler node. And I like this node because what you can do is you can very easily graphically set up your weekly schedule. So I have it set up from Monday to Friday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And what it does is during this scheduled time, it will send payload on, and outside of this time, it will send off. And I'm triggering it when the state changes and also on startup. So what it does is it will send a payload on or off, and I'm sending it to this node, which if you follow my videos you should be quite familiar with. I have this boolean switch which turns automations on and off. So I'm checking whether it's on. So when it's on, which is the top one, then I'm going to either turn the queues on or turn them off, and I will do that based on the payload. So if the payload is on, it will be the top node. Then I will turn the queues on, and if it's off, I will turn them off. But before doing that, I will also check a group. I have a group with me and my wife, whether one of us is at home. Then I will turn the queues on, and if both of us are outside, I will actually turn them off. So what it does is it will trigger this in the morning and in the evening. If it's in the evening, it will turn it off. And if it's in the morning, it will turn it on if one of us is home. Otherwise, it will turn it off as well. Which brings me to the beginning of this flow, because additionally to the trigger by the schedule, I also trigger it when the state of the person Vasek or person Jana changes. So when we come home or leave home, we will trigger that as well, and then the same logic will apply. So I don't have to do it twice. And for the actual switches, what I do is I simply call switch turn on, and then I have the list of the entities which I'm turning on, so the Netflix and the YouTube. So I guess it's pretty simple. Let me show you one more, which I have in the standard Home Assistant automation, and this is the one I use for renewing the Let's Encrypt certificate. And the way it works is it's simply triggered at a specific time, and then I turn on the dst-nat rule that is forwarding the port, I think it's port 80, that's needed for the Let's Encrypt. Then it's going to restart the Let's Encrypt add-on, and it's going to wait 1 minute just to make sure the refresh is completed. and then it will turn this NAT rule off again. So I guess it can't get easier than that. And that's all it is. Pretty simple, isn't it? I hope you find this useful, and maybe you find some inspirations for doing other things, perhaps with some other routers. Let me know in your comments. So that's it for this video, and I catch you in the next one. Bye.